Hello everyone, this is Marika and welcome back to this new session of Management of Nursing Education and Services. So in our previous sessions, we have discussed unit number 1 and unit number 2. In this session today, we are going to start unit number 3. And in this session today, we are going to see a very interesting and also a very important topic for us nurses. The topic for today's discussion is hospital. We are going to discuss in detail what is a hospital, what are the different objectives of the hospital, and also different scopes of the hospital. Now, as a nursing student, we belong to a medical background and we are aware about a place called hospital. It is one of the most frequently, most commonly used term for us. But how many of us really knows what exactly is a hospital and why is a hospital established? What are the different objectives of the hospital? So let us see in detail what is a hospital. We are going to have a small introduction about the hospital. We are going to learn the definitions of the hospital and then we will move on to the objectives and the scope of the hospital. To say in a very simple term, a hospital is a place where ill or sick people are provided care with. So when a person develops an illness, any individual, when they develop an illness, they go to the hospital. The hospital is a place where an individual with a certain illness is treated. The care is provided to the individual by the nurses. In a very common term, we can say that a hospital is a place where sick individuals are treated, provided care by the nurses. We can also say that a hospital is the rest house for the sick people. Every individual who is sick and who requires special treatment, who requires special nursing care are admitted in the hospital. So it can be considered as a rest house of the sick people. To provide proper care, to make sure that people are provided satisfactory care, a hospital must be fully equipped. It must have all the necessary resources such as manpower, materials, as well as money. So we understand that a hospital is an organization. It is an organization which requires a lot of manpower for running of that organization. It requires material because we are providing care to each and every individual with different health needs, as well as funding or money is required to provide care to those people, to have a hospital with good equipments, materials, and to provide the satisfactory care. As I told, a hospital must have proper resources such as manpower. Now, what does manpower of the hospital include? We know that in hospital we have doctors. It can be regular doctors or visiting doctors. It can be nurses and also other medical department people as well as class 4 workers. So these are all the manpower that is required in the hospital. A hospital requires the doctors, it requires the nurses, it requires other people from medical professions. It also requires class 4 workers for its smooth functioning. The second resource or the second important thing to run the hospital, as I said, is the material. Now, material in the hospital includes various different things such as the instruments that are used to provide any kind of care to the patient, to perform any kind of procedures on the patient, machineries that are required to provide care, to perform procedures over the patient, and also the linens that are required. So there are different types of materials that are required in the hospital. It includes instrument, machinery, linens, as well as various other things that are required to provide a satisfactory care for the patient. And finally, the main resource that is required is money. To run any kind of organization, funding or money is required in order to ensure the smooth functioning of the organization. Similarly, like that, a hospital is also an organization and therefore it requires proper funding and money in order to run the hospital. So what we discussed till now is what is a hospital in a very common terms. And we've also seen what are the 3 basic things that are required to run any hospital. Above all of these things, except what we have discussed, there is something that is more important and that is required to have a smooth functioning of any organization and not just hospital. That is a proper management system. In order to run any organization, organization, in order to ensure that the organization functions in a proper way, the system of management must be proper. A hospital must be managed in a very well planned manner in order to make sure that the patient who comes with different health needs are provided satisfactory care, and also to ensure that the employees, the staff working in the hospital are happy working in that environment. So far, we have discussed in very common terms about what is the hospital and what are the main resources that are required to run a hospital. I hope you've understood. Now we are moving on to the definition of hospitals. There are different authors, there are different medical dictionaries that have given the definition to the hospital, and the first definition that we are going to see is given by World Health Organization. So you can see the definition given by World Health Organization on the screen here. So this definition says that the hospital is an integral part of social and medical organization. And the main function of the hospital is to provide complete care to the population, both preventive and curative. Which means a hospital is an important part of social and medical organization. And what is the main function of establishing a hospital? WHO says that the hospital's main function is to provide complete care to its population in terms of curative care as well as preventive care. So, curative care is provided in order to cure a certain illness. We are already aware about it. And preventive care is provided in order to prevent a certain disease or an illness. WHO also says in this definition that the function of the hospital is not just providing care to the patient who comes to the hospital, but the outpatient services of the hospital must reach out to the families. Now, we cannot only consider hospital as a place where we provide curative and preventive care. This definition also describes that a hospital is a training center for training the medical professionals. I hope you've understood what this definition explains. This definition says that hospital is one of the most important part of our social as well as our medical organization, and the main function of the hospital is to provide complete care, both curative and preventive care to its population. Now, its function does not limit there. The function expands to the outpatient services which must reach out to the families in the community, and it also acts as a training center for the healthcare workers. For example, we as nursing students are sent to hospital. Why are we sent to hospital? In order to train ourselves to become a skillful staff nurse in our later life. Similarly, like that, various other medical department students are also provided training in the hospital. The second definition that we are going to see is given by Stedman's Medical Dictionary. The Stedman's Medical Dictionary defines the hospital as a place which provides care, cure, and treatment for the sick and wounded people. Not just providing care, cure, and treatment for sick and wounded, a hospital is also a place which studies the disease and also trains the doctors and the nurses. So this definition overall says that hospital is a place, it is an institution which provides care, cure, as well as treatment for the sick and wounded people. Along with providing the care and cure for sick and wounded people, it also studies about the disease because researches are conducted in various hospitals, and it also trains the doctors and the nurses. The next definition that we are going to see is given by Blackstone Medical Dictionary. Have a look at the screen. Now, this definition describes the hospital as an institution which is primarily intended to provide medical care facilities for the population. So this definition defines hospital as an institution, as a medical institution, wherein the basic function or the primary function of the hospital is to provide the medical facility to the population. This definition also says that a hospital must have proper or appropriate number of staffs that are required to run the organization. It must be well equipped with all the machineries and equipments that are required, which helps to provide both therapeutic and diagnostic services to the people. and must provide medical care, nursing care, as well as dietary services to the patient in order to cure their illness. I hope you've understood the definitions of hospital. We've discussed three different definitions. Moving on, let us see the objectives of the hospital. We have seen the definition, we've seen the introduction, we've seen in common terms what does a hospital mean. But how many of us are actually aware what are the objectives of the hospital? Why is it actually established? We're going to see the objectives in detail. The very first objective of any hospital is to deliver quality care to the patient, to the people in need, irrespective of their caste, their race, their color, as well as their socio-economic status. So, a hospital is established in order to provide care to the people. Therefore, the hospital must be able to deliver the quality care irrespective of the socio-economic status, irrespective of what caste the person belongs to, as well as irrespective of their race. So, the second objective of the hospital is to promote and restore health as well as prevent illness and complications. So we are providing care to the patient in order to maintain their health, in order to restore their health, as well as to prevent any kind of disease or any kind of illness in the people. I hope you've understood the first two objectives of the hospital. The very first objective is to deliver quality care irrespective of the caste, race, color, and socioeconomic status. And the second objective is to promote and restore health and to prevent illness. The third objective of the hospital is, of course, to cure the illness. Now, whatever existing illness an individual comes with, the hospital should have an aim to cure that illness. As we know, people come for curative care to the hospital, and therefore the third objective of the hospital is to cure illness and help the people to maintain their healthy life. The fourth objective of hospital is to create awareness among the people about the health problems. Now, this particular objective of the hospital is usually ignored or it is not taken seriously. Hospitals provide cure to the people who comes to the hospital, curative care is provided, and sometimes restorative and preventive care is also provided. But the hospital is not only supposed to provide cure to the patient who comes to the hospital, but the hospital also has an aim to make sure that they create awareness about various health problems among their community people. Another very important and interesting objective of the hospital is to find out or to diagnose the hidden illness among the people. Now, to early detect the case and to also help the people overcome the problem in order to prevent the complication is also one of the major objectives of the hospital. So, there are certain diseases whose symptoms are not manifested. We cannot see the symptoms of the disease until it reaches to the last stage. So, in such cases, it is the objective of the hospital, it should be the aim of the hospital to ensure that proper diagnosis is done for people in order to find out the hidden illness and then prevent the complication. The next objective of the hospital is to provide palliative as well as rehabilitative services care to terminally ill people and people with chronic illness. Palliative care, as we are all aware, is a care that is provided to terminally ill people. Hospital should also provide palliative care to terminally ill patients. The next important objective of the hospital is to provide quality and standard care to the patient in order to make sure that the patient overcome their health needs, in order to make sure that the problems of the patients are addressed. It is obvious that the care that is delivered by the hospital, it must be holistic and it must be proper. The care that is provided must meet certain standards and quality care must be provided. Another important objective of the hospital is to uplift the standard of nursing care provided to the patients. So this is one of the most important objective of the hospital because nurses are known to be the heart of the hospital. There are a lot of nurses working in the hospital and nurses are one of the most important part. Nursing department itself is the most important wing in any hospital. Therefore, the quality of care that a nurse is providing to the patient matters matters a lot. It promotes patient satisfaction, as well as the patient can be disappointed with the nursing care that the patient is receiving. Therefore, it is very, very important to uplift the standard of nursing care, and one of the major objectives of the hospital is to uplift the standard of nursing care provided to the patients. Next important objective of the hospital is to administer the leadership and also assign the task to each and every staff. So in the hospital, there are different departments, there are different people working for the smooth functioning of the organization. Therefore, there must be a proper selection of the leader who can actually assign the task and also supervise the task of various different staffs working in the hospital. The leader must be chosen wisely, and once the leader is chosen, it is the responsibility of the leader to delegate the task to each and every employee according to their position, according to their capacity to work. The next very important objective of the hospital is to provide proper training to the medical professionals, to the students of medical professionals. It may be for the upcoming doctors, or it may be for student nurses and various other departments within the medical profession. The technicians, the doctors, the nurses, the pharmacists, everyone must be trained properly in the hospital. It is one of the major objectives of the hospital. Another important objective of the hospital is to provide in-service and continuing education to the employees working within the hospital. Even though to become a staff nurse, we complete a particular degree and then we are enrolled as staff nurses. But in our medical field, in our nursing department, there are various developments that are happening. There are various changes that are happening. The health needs of the patients changes on a day-to-day basis. The health need of the community changes. It depends on day-to-day, it depends on the community that we are in. Various advancement in the technology that we use as nurses also changes. So therefore, hospital must also provide in-service education to not just nurses but also to each and every staff within the hospital in order to enhance their knowledge and skills. And the final and also one of the most important objective of the hospital is to make sure that they encourage their staffs, their employees to get involved to conduct research in their respective department. Now we already know how important is research and how important is evidence-based care. Therefore, the hospital must have a proper objective to encourage their employees to conduct researches in their respective department in order to provide evidence-based care to the patients. So these are the 12 objectives of the hospital. So to conclude today, we have discussed what is a hospital. We've seen the different definitions of hospital and also discussed in detail about the objectives of the hospital. I hope the class was helpful and I'll see you all in the next session. Thank you and have a great day ahead.